My fiancée sabotaged my career out of jealousy, then tried to sue me when I canceled the wedding. Now I'm picking up the pieces.
I'm 31, male, working in tech. I didn't grow up with much, so my career was everything to me. I worked my ass off to get to where I am. I wasn't born into privilege, so I knew I had to hustle. After years of grinding it out, long hours, late nights, side gigs, I finally landed a senior role at a tech startup, which paid off big time. For the first time in my life, I was financially stable and not constantly stressed about my next paycheck. Things were solid. Then I met A. She came into my life just as everything seemed to be clicking into place. She was smart, funny, working in marketing, and seemed like she had her own career path mapped out. I thought she understood where I was coming from, that we were both driven people with goals. After about a year of dating, I proposed. We were in our late 20s, and it felt like the right time. Everything seemed perfect, but of course, that was just the surface. Looking back, the first signs were small. She'd make these little jabs about my job, but I didn't catch it at the time. It started off as stuff like, "Must be nice to sit behind a desk and get paid so much," or "Your job isn't even that hard." She'd say it with a laugh, so I just brushed it off. I figured, whatever, maybe she's just having a bad day. But over time, those comments didn't stop. They got worse. When I got a promotion that came with a huge raise, I was excited. This was a big deal. We'd been talking about buying a house, planning a future. When I told her about the promotion, I thought she'd be happy for me. Instead, she just shrugged and said, "Wow, everything always works out for you." Huh? No smile, no excitement. Just that. That stung, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I just let it go and figured she was stressed about something else. But things kept getting more tense between us. She'd pick fights about random stuff, accuse me of not spending enough time with her, even though I was busting my ass trying to balance work and our relationship. Then came the night before one of the biggest presentations of my career. I'd been prepping for weeks. This deal could land my company a major partnership, and I was running on fumes trying to get everything right. That night, A asked me to help her with something for her job. It wasn't urgent, just something she could easily handle on her own. I told her I was swamped and would help her tomorrow after my presentation. She flipped. "Everything's about your job, isn't it?" She snapped. "I'm always the one who has to take a back seat to whatever important thing you've got going on. Do you even care about us anymore?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain, telling her that this presentation was a big deal, but she didn't want to hear it. She stormed off, slamming doors, calling me selfish. I was too exhausted to fight, so I just let it go, hoping things would calm down by the next day. The next morning, everything changed. I got to work, and the vibe was off immediately. People were whispering, avoiding eye contact. I had no idea what was going on until my boss called me into his office. Apparently, someone had sent an anonymous email to the higher-ups, accusing me of stealing ideas, faking reports, and all kinds of unethical shit. The accusations were detailed. Way too detailed for someone outside the company to know. That's when it hit me. I knew all this stuff. She had access to my laptop, my work files, everything. And after the way she'd been acting, it didn't seem like a coincidence. I didn't want to believe it, though. I didn't want to think that the person I was about to marry could be this malicious. That night, I confronted her. "Did you send that email?" I asked, my voice shaking. I could barely get the words out. At first, she played dumb. "What email? What are you talking about?" But when I kept pressing, her whole demeanor changed. She crossed her arms, leaned against the kitchen counter, and with this dead look in her eyes, she just said, "Yeah, I did." I just stood there, stunned. Why? Why the hell would you do that? She didn't even flinch, because you needed to be knocked down a peg. You think you're so much better than everyone else? Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your job, you'd realize how you treat people. I wanted you to see what it's like when things don't just fall into place for you. I couldn't even respond. I felt like my brain short-circuited. She was saying this like it was no big deal. Like this was a reasonable thing to do. She didn't apologize, didn't even try to explain herself beyond that. She just stood there, waiting for me to say something. I called off the wedding on the spot, told her to pack her shit and leave. I couldn't even look at her. She started crying, saying she didn't mean it, that she was just stressed and felt like I was leaving her behind. She begged me to reconsider, saying we could work it out. But I was done. That's when the real crazy started. First, her family came at me. Her mom, her sisters, even her dad, all blowing up my phone, calling me a heartless bastard for ruining her life. They all bought into her sob story that I'd left her high and dry out of nowhere. I blocked every single one of them. I wasn't about to explain myself to people who had no idea what had really happened. Then, I started pulling every manipulative trick she could think of. First, she tried the sympathy card. She emailed me, claiming she was pregnant. I had no reason to believe her, but it was still enough to make me pause. I asked her to meet up so we could talk about it, and when we met, I knew it was bullshit. She couldn't keep her story straight. She didn't have any proof. No doctor's appointments. Nothing. I told her to show me a pregnancy test, and she blew up again, accusing me of not trusting her. Why would I trust you after what you did? I said, barely keeping my anger in check. She stormed off after that, and I thought maybe that was the end of it. But of course it wasn't. Next, she started showing up at my work. Not inside the office, but waiting for me in the parking lot after hours. She'd corner me, acting like she just wanted to talk. She apologized over and over again, but it was the same bullshit. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was just sorry it didn't work out the way she planned. When I made it clear I wasn't going back to her, she tried a different approach. She started telling me that we'd spent too much time together to just throw it all away. She'd bring up the wedding planning, the money we'd spent, and how we've come so far. As if that was supposed to make me forget about how she tried to tank my career out of jealousy. When that didn't work, she tried to get my friends involved. A few of them reached out, saying she contacted them, asking them to talk to me. She spun the whole thing as if I was being unreasonable, that I was throwing away our relationship over a moment of weakness on her part. She painted herself as the victim, the one who was hurting the most. Then came the most desperate move. A mutual friend told me I was trying to organize an intervention, like I was the one who needed help. She wanted to get a group of our friends together to talk me down and convince me to take her back. She had completely lost it by this point. But the final straw? She tried to sue me for the cost of the wedding. Yep. After all that, she had the nerve to send me a letter from her lawyer, claiming I owed her money for the deposits, the venue, the dress, everything. She was essentially demanding a payout because I called off the wedding. Never mind the fact that she was the one who tried to destroy my job. Never mind that I'd been the one footing most of the bill. She honestly believed she was entitled to some kind of compensation. I got my lawyer involved, and thankfully it didn't go anywhere. But the fact that she even tried was mind-blowing. She genuinely thought she could screw me over. And when that didn't work, she wanted me to pay for it. That was the last I heard from her. After the legal threats didn't work, she finally stopped trying to reach out. I've spent the last few months focusing on work, on rebuilding the trust one lost with my coworkers after the whole email fiasco. Luckily, my boss had my back, and everything blew over after a thorough investigation. But it left a mark. I've moved on, but I won't lie. The whole thing messed with my head. I'm a lot more guarded now, more cautious about who I let in. You think you know someone, you think you're building a future together, and then they pull something like this. It's like a slap in the face, realizing the person you were going to marry was secretly rooting for your failure. So yeah, that's my story. If you've made it this far, congratulations.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.